Hello, my name is Greg Massi, and this is The Color of Air, a podcast about the musical journey. And finally, we have the episode I've been talking about for many, many weeks now. Today, I'm going to present to you my interview with Toby Driver, main composer, songwriter for the band Kayo Dot and for Maudlin of the Well, two bands I was involved in with him, as well touring bass player for Secret Chiefs 3, as well as bass player in the band Vora, guitar player in the band Stern, and probably a whole bunch of other projects that I'm missing. So anyway, that's going to be coming up soon for you. I know some people have been kind of interested to hear that. So, but first of all, you can find us at www.colorofair.com. You can subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on two different places. You can either go to the iTunes store or you can go to Stitcher. And then you can find us on facebook.com/colorofairpodcast or on Twitter @thecolorofair. And for any comments or questions or anything on your mind, please email us at colorofairpodcast@gmail.com. And I want to just interject, last week's episode was my Q&A episode, and I was very happy to get some responses from you guys, to get some questions to talk about. It was a lot of fun for me to kind of interact with you in that way. So please, if you have any questions at all about music, about the podcast, about life, whatever you want, just email me. We would love, actually I shouldn't say we, because this is a one-person operation. I would love to hear from you. That would be really, really cool. And it kind of shows me if people are, sending in questions or talking. It gives me kind of that direct feedback that the show is actually reaching people. And that's an infinitely cool thing for me. While I'm at it, you can also go to www.retconrecordings.com to check out all the musical stuff that I've been involved with lately. Ballaset has been very, very busy. We've really been, setting up plans, trying to figure out how we're going to finish the writing and recording for this new album. Right now, I can't tell you the album title. I can't tell you a release date. What I can tell you is we're shooting for a summer of 2015 release date. And I think, when musicians talk about when an album's going to come out, I don't know if people really understand, or I'm trying to think of the right word, or can process, all the little bits that go into recording an album. I mean, if I had a budget where I could book a whole bunch of time in the studio, I would certainly, spend a good couple months writing and then just go right into the studio and have the thing done and ready to go. But as such, it doesn't work that way for us. Part of it is the people in my band. We all have jobs. We all have busy lives, so trying to organize these things has been very, you have to be very specific with them, but you also have to give yourself enough time so that you don't try to overcommit to doing things. So, I spent a lot of time in the last couple of weeks working out timelines, and the progress is going pretty good so far. And I'm going to keep saying this every time I talk about it, but I'm really excited about this music, and I hope that it resonates with people, and that also kind of ties into my interview with Toby, because I had scheduled the interview with him. My wife and I were going to New York for just for a weekend getaway, And specifically, I said, okay, well, then I can find a time to sit down with Toby. We can get this thing done. And probably about a week prior to the interview, I had one of my musician panic attacks. These happen a lot, and I'm sure I'm not the only one to feel them. But there is, when you're involved with any kind of artistic expression, obviously what you're doing, unless you're so devoid of an emotional connection to what you're doing artistically, which is most likely not the case, a lot of what you're doing is putting yourself out there. Putting an emotion you are feeling into words or into music or into a painting or writing, etc., etc. And so it's tough because, you don't want to come off as one of those egotistical artists who think that you're amazing, to think that, oh, I'm writing the music that's going to change the world, this kind of stuff. You have to approach music, at least in my experience, because that's my discipline, you have to approach it with a sense of humility, and I think a lot of people don't really get that sometimes. And, it's one of these things where I was just freaking out, because when you look at the effort that we've put into this band, and granted, I'll fully take the blame for certain aspects not going the right way, meaning, promotion wise or anything. Because, Balisette is it's an operation done just by us. We don't have promo people. We don't have a record label. We don't have any of that stuff. So when we're ready to record, I'm essentially the record label. I, get the money together. I budget the money, sometimes badly, and get the studio time booked. The rest of the band works their asses off on getting the material ready. And, when we put out the stuff, we self-release. I still have probably 600-700 copies of our debut album, A Time for Rust, on CD here in my house. I've got t-shirts that haven't been touched in years. And, I'm sure there are things I could have done to probably better promote myself. But the feeling that I had was more, you want that feeling of that what you're doing is connecting with people. We had that with Maudlin of the Well, and we had that with Kayo Dot. And so for me to kind of put myself out there with a couple releases, and not really get that kind of feeling back, that we're reaching people, even if it's just a few people, it can be hard. And as much as you want to say, you're humble and you're above these kinds of, selfish things, at the end of the day, I'm human just like anybody else. And I want to feel that the work that I'm doing, has meaning and is validated in some sort of way. It doesn't necessarily need to be financial, but, and so at the time I was kind of feeling kind of down at that particular moment. And let me also interject by saying, when I'm talking about this, I don't want to make it seem like Balisette hasn't reached absolutely nobody, because that's not true. There have been a lot of cool people, a lot of cool reviewers, a lot of cool people who have bought the CD, who've sent us emails. So we have reached people. I shouldn't be so dire about it. We have done, done something, but it's sometimes, there are some times when you just feel like your music isn't being appreciated. And, it's a tough feeling. Even if you try to be realistic and humble about it, it can hurt sometimes. So that long story was just to say, I was in this feeling in one of these moments, and I had text messaged Toby, and he said, well, let's talk about it on the podcast. And so that part of the podcast interview with him is going to deal with that as well. There's a lot of questions I wanted to ask him about the stuff he's been working on, because it's, stuff that I don't really get to see him as much as I used to, and it was important to me to kind of learn stuff that I was curious about as a friend. So, but it's an interesting thing to me as well, because Toby's been my friend for 22 years. If I were a real dick, I'd be putting pictures of us from high school in the artwork for the show right now, so that you would see it and have a good laugh at how stupid we looked back in high school. And but I won't do that. But it was a lot of fun hanging out with him. We pretty much spent the whole day together that day. The podcast interview is only about an hour and a half of that day, but we hung out, we grilled, we drank, we talked. We watched a YouTube video of the British Headbangers Ball from MTV in 1993 or 94, covering some festival where they interviewed My Dying Bride and Anathema and At the Gates, back when all these bands were still fairly young, and it was pretty cool. It was a cool day. But I could probably have Toby on again multiple times. There's so much stuff that we could talk about, so many stories we could tell. I know some of you sent in our questions for me last week. I could probably apply some of those questions to him and get different responses for you. So I hope you enjoyed the interview, and just know that it's kind of just really, to me, it's just part one, because I feel like I could probably do another 20 interviews with him, and get interesting things to talk about in each of them, because we just have that long of a relationship. Friendship, that we could discuss those things. So look forward to more of that in the future. But back to the subject of the podcast, taking care of some business. This month is the Kayo Dot month, where I'm really trying to hone in on those guys and promote their new album, Coffins On Io, which comes out on the Flenser record label in October. But just to give you the heads up, starting in October, my plan is to start going out into Boston and interviewing some more local guys. You've all heard my interview with Mike and Sophia on episode 4 or 5, I forget which one, and my interview with Matt Zappa of Protean Collective, who I'm going to see tonight open up for Pain of Salvation. But there's just so many other cool people in the Boston music scene, I would love to, that I would love to interview. So I don't want to name any names right now, because we're still in the process of scheduling things, but just look forward to that, hopefully in October and November, kind of honing in on the local scene here in Boston. But enough about that. Let's get to the interview. I always say that, let's get to the interview, but there's always music before the interview. So to start you off, I'm going to play you the one track from the new Kayo Dot album, Coffins On Io, that I can definitely play you, because it's already been released to the public by Flenser. So this track is called Library Subterranean.
in vain. Too hard and fathom. He drew the pictures of his dreams, the pictures of his dreams mechanically. Unlock the shrine withdrawn, through open doors unmade. Remembering elusive shame in pieces like knives asleep. It leaves the soul to win.
How's that?
I don't know. Is it okay?
Yeah,
Cool.
we're recording now.
Cool.
I figured if we got the awkward pause out of the way first, then the rest of the conversation's due to go like up from there.
Cool. You had some questions that you prepared, or what do you?
No. Like, what am I supposed? Well, what am I supposed to ask you? So, how did you get started? I know.
All right.
Well, they don't know, but I figured it's two friends, been friends for 20 years. We should just have normal conversation. It sounds.
Oh, okay.
That sounds awkward.
All right.
How you been doing, man?
I've been good, man.
See, this is what I mean. So I mean by wondering if people actually enjoy talking to me or not.
Oh, yeah. So have you found that like having the headphones on while you record is better than not having them on?
No. I tend to not record with headphones on because as long as I have the volume set, I mean, it's just.
Yeah, because then you're just gonna hear your own voice and it's gonna feel weird, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna listen back to it and hear my own voice and feel weird. It's kind of the whole process. But no, let's talk. So, what do you have going on? Let's talk about that because we have the new Kayo Dot album,
Yeah.
Coffins On Io,
Yeah, there's a new Kayo Dot album.
and you're beginning work on Tartar Lamb 3.
There's a Tartalam 3 debut show in November. It's Jeremiah's Zimmerman's month of this. His week at the Stone. So we're just doing a new thing. And then the Kayo Dot album is going to be out in October.
On
On the Flenser Records. They have Ret Con Recordings and Botanist, and they have a Nice Life now. This solo artist called Planning for Burial. They did the Vora vinyl. They have a lot of cool stuff. Cool label.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I haven't talked to you in a while, so so you've been busy then.
Yeah,
It's the dumbest way to put it.
there was this Secret Chiefs tour that we were supposed to do May and June, pretty much. It was actually going to be half of April, all of May, a little bit of June. It was going to be something like an 8 or 9 week tour. I don't know. It was going to be long, and then it got canceled, so I ended up having June and July and August pretty much free. So it was a good opportunity to do a couple records. We did a Stern record.
Yep.
It was good to have that time, that kind of time to just make new stuff, I guess.
Well, this is one thing that I thought would be good to address because I feel like it's weird for me because when I read things about you, it's very weird to me because like people like forming opinions about you,
Yeah.
or talking about you on like internet things or whatever. And one thing I feel like it's important to put out there, and I'm just basing this on the brief time we lived together, is that you're prolific, but you take writing seriously. You're one of the hardest working people, like I know in terms of because you're diligently always writing and trying to come up with something new and always pushing that forward, which I think maybe people, I don't know if they understand that about you.
Cool. Well, thanks. But yeah, I mean, what have you read? How does that relate to what? Have you read something where people say that I'm not taking it seriously or something?
No. It's not that. It's just mean I guess if somebody I'm talking about when people call Kayo Dot pretentious and things like that, and they make it sound like it's art for art's sake, and I don't really like to, you know what I mean? It's weird for weird, you know what I mean? People who don't get it.
First of all, the word pretentious, I think when people use that word, mostly they don't know what it means. I think people use pretentious usually to mean, what do they mean when they say pretentious?
I think they use it to mean that you're deliberately making something to confuse people. Or...
Yeah, and they're saying like that that you're kind of like taking yourself too serious or that kind of. That's not really what pretentious means, right? Pretentious means that you're basically implying that there's meaning where there is not meaning. You're pretending that there's substance where there actually is no substance. And I first of all, I don't really know how a listener would know that about an artist. Like how do you ever know what the artist is thinking or feeling or what their intentions are?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess like the best way to know what an artist is thinking, feeling, and that kind of thing, other than an interview, is the art should. If you're a good artist, your art should be able to communicate what you want it to communicate, I guess.
Right.
And if you're failing at communicating that, then maybe you're failing at communicating your idea. But that's not the same as pretension. It's like the totally like the opposite of pretension, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like if somebody's got a complaint about like not being able to understand something, it's just. I like to think of art relationships like between artist and audience as like the artist gives 50%, the audience gives 50%, like that kind of thing. And where you both have to engage. And I guess like if something is being missed, then it's like a combination of like both parties not being compelled to engage equally or just like my failure as a communicator.
Yeah.
I guess whatever. Yeah.
Well,
not the same as pretentiousness.
Yeah, I mean, I also wasn't bringing it up as a reason to piss you off or tell you about.
It doesn't piss me off.
No, because I found it interesting. I found it very inspiring and motivating for me to see, like, because I remember living with you and, I mean, you were keeping different hours at that time, but I remember that you would just be working straight through the night from, 11 o'clock at night till, 4 or 5 in the morning, just like trying something new and
keeping everybody awake. Being really noisy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really do that anymore.
But it's this interesting. Here's an interesting thing. Yeah, I mentioned to Toby on the way over here that "here's an interesting thing" is one of my catchphrases.
Well, let's hope that it's interesting. Here's an interesting thing, and then something really boring.
Yeah. Here's an interesting. I'm tired.
Here's an interesting thing. My tax return didn't show up.
Well, no. But what I meant was that I'm noticing more for myself. And I don't have this luxury because. I just don't have the right motivation or work ethic, I don't think. I work in such a different way, but it seems to me that a lot of people, it seems contrary to what the creative process should be, because you think, I just create whenever inspiration strikes me. But then some people can wait years before they have like that divine moment where, there's some sort of inspiration, whereas I'm noticing a lot more people are looking at it like, well, no, you have to go in there and you actually have to work at it. You have to treat it like it's like almost like a day job. Well, not a day job, but you have to treat it like you have to give yourself, you have to, set yourself up and like work, as opposed to just sitting around waiting for something magical to come to your head or something like that.
Yeah, you have to be deliberate about it. I think with writing music, it's something that you can like develop chops at. It's like the more you practice your guitar, the better you're going to be at guitar. The more you practice drawing, the easier it's going to be to draw something quickly. And it's the same with writing music. It's like develop your chops at it so that you can do it more efficiently. And remember, like I started writing music when I was like 12. So by the time we were living together and I was 25, I'd already been doing it a long time. So I kind of know how to do things more efficiently, I guess. And you really didn't really start writing seriously until around then. You know what I mean? Because you had this one album that you had been working on kind of in your head for a while, for like years and years, like maybe 7 years.
Yeah, I still live in my head most of the time.
Yeah,
it's tough. I'm trying to break that cycle.
Yeah, but I think my memory is that you didn't actually like start deliberately saying I'm gonna make albums and I'm gonna like make these things happen until like around that time, you know, like we were both 25 or so.
Yeah, well, I talked a little bit about this with in another interview, I think. I mean, to turn the subject on me for a second, but well, I just remember being in a really weird place in college because I didn't have like bands that I was playing with in college. I had this idea like I'm going to become a songwriter, I'm going to become a composer, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and it never really materialized. Like I would have ideas, but nothing really strong, nothing that I was like, oh, this is definitely the thing that's going to set the world on fire and and whatever. And I think the way I started out in college, and then the way I finished in college was, you know, going in there thinking, oh, I'm going to be this when I get out of college, and then getting out of college and being like, I don't know what I am, and I didn't know. I had some song ideas. I mean, me and Adam started working together in college, but I didn't have this like strong leaning towards what I was going to do, and so at the time it just seemed more natural. When you were like, okay, we're going to take Maudlin and we're going to make it an actual thing, not just this, you know, fun studio project that we're doing, you know, we were doing at that point.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, I don't have anything else going on, so I think I should pursue this because this is a strong idea, this is strong material, and, you know, this is what I should focus on. And that kind of pushed my own kind of creative feelings to the back burner, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then it took a while to actually to kind of say like, okay, well now I feel more comfortable in myself to try to get out there and get ideas out there and so
yeah. But then, you know, it's also interesting to note on that note. Is that we find nowadays, like, you know, being in your mid-30s, me and, like, you know, my whole peer group, we've all been writing music for a long time now, and you know, almost every musician that I know is actually in like a bunch of bands, and that goes along with like the kind of like writing efficiently thing that I was talking about. That you know, as you kind of like grow and you develop that kind of ability, you are able to actually like be in many different things at once and be able to like actually like apportion your creative energy that way, just because you're just more proficient at organizing those thoughts, I guess.
And now when you're playing in all the different bands, you're not necessarily the main songwriter in those bands either. Like Vora, you're not the main songwriter.
No, yeah, and that's
Stern,
one way to kind of to help organize those kinds of energies. You know, you can like have one band that's like your main kind of thing that you write very deeply for, and then all the other bands, I bring bass lines or riffs or whatever. You know, kind of like, you know, your role in Maudlin, like you added solos a lot of the time and like a occasional lick, but then, you know, if you found yourself in that position now, I think that you would find that you would still have energy to write your own songs, just because like you've been doing it longer and you're good at it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think that was one other thing I was trying to break out of too, was that because I remember at the National Guitar Summer Workshop, like the first year I went, that I remember everybody was like shitting on Kirk Hammett all the time. Uh-huh. And they're like, oh, he doesn't even play the rhythm guitar on the albums, he just does the solos. And so I felt like as we were doing like the Maudlin stuff, I was like are people going to treat me like Kirk Hammett? They're like, he's just the asshole who plays the solos. He doesn't actually contribute to it. So I think that kind of, and well, to be fair though, I think for the longest time, I don't think my rhythm guitar chops were actually very good until, you know, it took me a while, especially playing live with Maudlin and then with Kayo Dot. It kind of helped me develop because I think I'd been mostly just focusing so much on playing lead. That was like the main goal of my like teenage years was like, I want to be a soloist.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So, and I think once I learned how to be a better player all around, that led to then being able to write better and conceive music better than just being like, oh, this is this key, so I know I can do this crazy scale or something like that.
Probably. That's probably true.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always thought you were a fine rhythm guitar player.
Oh.
But,
thank you.
Also back then, it was really hard to hear what was going on.
Yeah.
Like, who knows, man?
Yeah, you're great, I think.
Yeah, it's just like a bunch of noise, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, so now, all right, so, but you had focused a lot, obviously on Kayo Dot, and then you did the solo record for Zorn, because he wanted you to get your name out there as a composer too, as a named composer, right?
Yeah.
Which and did you have a hard time with that at all, egotistically, with putting your name on a record as opposed to being a band?
Yeah, man, I always thought that idea was lame. I still wouldn't want to do that, even 10 years later. If I was going to release something that was just a solo project, I would definitely want to give it a band name. Like, we're talking about that guy that's on Flenser called Planning for Burial, but it's just one guy, but he's got a band name.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? But it's because it's better than just having your stupid name. Yeah, and also it's kind of like, in a way, it's like, okay, let's say my friend Jeremiah again. Jeremiah's music is like, okay, if your listeners haven't heard my friend Jeremiah Zimmerman, he's kind of like avant-garde clarinet, like noise. It's amazing. But anyway, his music is like this kind of like brutal, like super dark, like almost noise music, but he always releases stuff under his name, Jeremiah Zimmerman, and I always, I want to say, I do say to him, I'm like, man, if you just had a band name, the type of audience that you would have would be entirely different, because like think of like Wolf Eyes or something. It's like a noise band, but it's like two guys, but they have a band name, and then it can be cool. Because it's cool to have like a Wolf Eyes shirt as opposed to having like a shirt with a dude's name on it. No one wants to wear a T-shirt that says like another guy's name on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if it had a band name, then people would wear that, and then your audience kind of becomes something else other than just fans of like academic sort of improvised jazz, that kind of thing. And that's kind of like what Jeremiah's audience ends up being. It's like these guys that are into, they think of him as like a jazz guy because it's like his name and he plays clarinet, but he's like, actually, like, that's not what that music is at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, but back to your question. Yeah, I think the idea of releasing something under my own name is not something that I want to do.
It's not your ideal situation, but
Yeah.
did you think that it actually helped your career, especially?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, Zorn knows what he's talking about. Yeah, he's right. Yeah, it helps. It helps get your name out there for sure.
Right, because as soon as you came to New York, I felt like you were also involved with besides other bands. Like you play with other guys doing like you played at the Stone a couple times with like ensemble groups of people just getting together to.
Oh yeah, I've done a couple of like the improv
Yeah.
parties that they have there. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So in that regard, yeah, it was cool. It was cool to do that, to get your name out like that.
The other thing I thought was really awesome about the solo album, and for anybody who doesn't know it, it's in the library loft. Was I felt like, well, as as serious of a label as Goetic is, and as serious as the music was, like, don't make no mistake about it, there was a certain sense of humor to the album layout.
yeah,
Which I thought kind of helped kind of like break the kind of like, maybe people don't realize it.
No one ever realized it. I think like not once has anyone ever said anything to me.
Should we reveal it, or should we?
Yeah. Reveal it. Yeah.
So, well, you can describe the actual cut where the cover comes from, but for those of you who don't know, when you open up the CD, is it the CD has the picture of the fig leaf?
Yeah, it's on the CD.
Yeah, it's on the CD, and
It's a fig leaf.
It's a fig leaf.
That means it's a dick joke.
Yeah. Because, because whenever there's ever pictures of Adam and Eve, Adam always has a fig leaf over his dick.
Yeah, or any classical figure.
Or any classical, or especially, in Monty Python, too. In that.
Yeah, it was a really Monty Python. Yeah, you do all the time.
So, the idea is when you take the CD out, you're taking the fig leaf off the dick.
Yeah.
It's not there, but it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, but, people don't really know about forestry very much, you know what I mean? So, no one really knows what kind of leaf that is. You know? How many people can identify a leaf? People can probably identify a maple leaf, right? But
I think so, but only because of the Canadian flag.
Right, yeah, but how many other, opportunities do people have to actually
pot leaf, man.
recognize it? Yeah, pot leaf, yeah.
So, serious album, not so serious artwork.
Yeah, and the cover is, not, the artwork is not serious.
Yeah.
Of course. And,
But the fact that you, but it...
The title Brown Light Upon, come on, yeah, there's so many things that aren't serious about that music. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of things that are serious, but a lot of things that aren't serious as well.
Yeah. Well, but I was talking about this with somebody else too. Is that we take music seriously because it's of course it's something we take very seriously. But just because you take music seriously doesn't mean you have to take yourself seriously. And if you do, then usually there's a problem.
What does that even mean? Take yourself seriously. What does that mean?
I mean, people who think they're God's gift to everything.
Okay, well, yeah, but that's if that's totally different from taking yourself seriously. I mean, just break that phrase down, taking yourself seriously.
Okay.
I don't even understand what that means. Take yourself seriously? Yeah, I mean, I guess I probably take myself seriously in a way. I mean, what I do with my life. I mean, it's. I like that. I mean, I like to feel like I'm not doing something frivolous. You know what I mean?
No. That's not what I meant. I meant.
No, I know that's not what you meant, but just think about when people say that. I just don't think that they even think about what they're saying. I take myself seriously, and like I just said, it's
but you
because
don't take yourself too seriously.
It's just I just don't I don't want to think that my life is something frivolous or trivial, and I don't want to feel like I'm wasting my time. I want to feel like everything that I do is meaningful. Then then of course I'm taking I'm taking it seriously.
Yeah, in that regard, yes.
Yeah,
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about I don't know. It's something. The thing that I'm trying to explain in my head is something you don't fall into. Is what I'm trying to say.
Oh. Okay.
So yeah, I don't mean that you don't take yourself seriously. I know you take. There's certain aspects you do take seriously, and you have to. I'm talking more about the way you carry yourself, and that you're not I don't know, you're self-deprecating like the rest of us.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that my shit don't stink. If that's what you mean.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so but going back to being in a bunch of different bands, though, because I don't have that experience. But did you find that so spending so many years focusing in on Kayo Dot and then focusing in on doing the Tartar Lamb stuff and everything like that, did going into these different bands where you don't necessarily have to be the creative one, the songwriter, did you feel that improved your overall abilities as a instrumental performer? Meaning, when you're composing for Kayo Dot, you're not necessarily. You're playing guitar, you're playing bass, but did it help? But being in another person's band, trying to live up to what the music they wrote and everything like that, do you think it kind of helped you develop as an instrumental performer? Just in terms of just playing the instrument, not...
Yeah, but I don't think it was about living up to the music, like you said. I think it was more just about learning somebody else's instincts. That's why we do karaoke a lot. Yeah, it makes you a better musician for many reasons. One, it's like you practice mic technique, you practice dealing with an audience, you practice dealing with a shitty monitor mix.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is in terms of the music, you're learning these vocal parts that are not necessarily like intuitive to you. They're not something that you would do, and then you hear somebody else's idea and you're like, wow, that's really interesting that they would go there and use that phrasing. It's not something that I would have done, and then that becomes part of your vocabulary. And I think it's the same thing with playing other people's music. The parts that you learn that they wrote help you kind of just like expand your vocabulary of what you can do with your instrument.
And then do you take that back into what you then are writing for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be stupid not to. Imagine if you just like went and learned something, and then when you went back to your safe place, you were just like, okay, fuck all that shit that I just learned. It would be so dumb. I always kind of like played my instruments sort of like functionally. I never, because I think it was like a deliberate kind of reaction to like pointless, like gratuitous virtuosity in a lot of music that like let's say Dream Theater or like the Satriani stuff, or just like that kind of music that I just thought was bad. And I saw it as a kind of like way. It was like a way of being a jock sort of musically. And so, my way to react to that as a younger person was just be like, well, I'm not even going to focus on like trying to like display my ability. I just want to like serve the music, and I'm just interested in the composing and the writing and the idea. And I wasn't really so interested in like the kind of individual performer sort of idea. You know what I mean? Yeah. And anyway, and then I didn't really start thinking about that until I moved to New York. Because here, there's like so much emphasis placed on the individual, and like so much less emphasis placed on the band. Then, it was like actually when I moved to New York, I haven't played bass actually in a band in a while, even though I've been playing bass since I was like 12 or 13 or whatever. I hadn't played bass in a while since when I moved to New York. I'd been playing guitar, and then I moved to New York, and then I realized that people thought I was a guitarist, and I was like, wait, I'm not a guitarist. Like I do all sorts of, I play all their stuff, but people just thought I was a guitarist because I had been playing guitar for the past few years, and they saw photos of it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I better start playing other stuff, And I went back to bass.
Well, you're also, I mean, you had this uncanny ability, especially when we were in high school. I remember this, that you had the uncanny ability of being able to pick up instruments really easily. Like, more so than, you know what I mean? Like, I just played guitar. That was my thing. Like, I could sort of futz around on a keyboard a little bit, but you were able to play guitar, play bass, play clarinet, and then, working you naturally had singing ability. So you had this kind of ability to apply yourself to a new instrument and be able to get something out of it. Like playing the cello on the Maudlin albums.
Yeah.
Never had a lesson.
Yeah.
But you just kind of found, again, it's functionality. You learned a way of playing it that fit within what you were trying to express.
Yeah.
Which may not necessarily be in line with the technique of how you actually play the instrument, but you're able to communicate through various instruments really easily. Yeah,
but that's a big difference between my approach and what your approach was, where you like became like very good at like one thing, and I was just more like, I need cello here, so I'll learn how to play this part that I want, But yeah, anyway, now I care more. I don't care a ton about that, But I've been noticing that like, if you care, like what happens a lot is that like press will be like, this guy's this guy deserves press because he's the best bass player. And it's like, well, he's not the best bass player. He does like this one thing, and he can play fast. And it's like, come on, man! Like playing fast isn't what makes you the best.
No.
I think what makes you the best is versatility and being able to kind of like serve the music. Any teenager can play fast. Not any teenager, but like if you practice a bunch, you can play fast.
I always made the case, and this is maybe not factually true, but you could, if you wanted to make, if in your head you said, okay, I want like this particular guitar lick to be the fastest way you could play it, you could, if you had knowledge of robots and technology, you could program a robot to shred and play the notes that you wanted to play in the way you wanted to play them, but there would be something missing. You know what I mean? Like, I think, like, if you're playing fast, there has to be an emotion behind it besides just the technical showmanship. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the guys that are like the fastest guys, like they have that emotion. I think they're real musicians. I'm just saying that that's not what qualifies somebody as like the best musician. You know, the fastest musician doesn't equal the best musician. That's like saying the heaviest metal band is the best metal band. That's not true.
All right.
The heaviest one is like just the heaviest one.
Yeah.
And sometimes most often it's actually like extremely unlistenable, you know? Because it's too heavy. It's like too extreme. It's just like, fuck, this music doesn't sound like music.
Well, and I think that for me, I mean, I think that got ingrained to me from having the time period we grew up in, where my first exposure to music was hair metal, and so to me, playing fast was this thing you're supposed to work towards. But when I first started taking guitar lessons, my teacher wasn't necessarily a shred guy. He's more of a bluesy rock guy. And so his emphasis for me was like, well, yeah, you can do that, but let's start trying to bend notes properly. Let's start trying to infuse a little nuances into your playing instead of just like this, you know, and I think that benefited me more than, you know, that really found its way into my quote-unquote style without actually, you know, I still can't really shred super well. Like, my technique is pretty terrible, actually.
A lot of time kids, too, you know, when they're learning guitar, they don't really understand why that's important, especially because they want to compare themselves to everyone else. The easiest, most immediate way to compare yourself is be like, well, I can play faster than you, so that means that I'm better than you, you know?
Yeah.
But that's like a really, really like immature way of thinking about music, I think. And it's really funny that like the scene that I'm in now, you know, metal, like New York, whatever, like I'm 35 and like people in my peer group still like haven't figured that out. That's like actually more, it's about more than just like your left hand, you know?
Wiggly wigglies.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of an anecdote. So when I was actually teaching at the guitar workshop, so I taught like rock guitar 1 or metal extreme guitar 1 or whatever, like, so entry beginner level. And you remember, because you went with me a couple times to, you know how you'd go in for your class, and if you felt like it was too slow or too beneath what you could do, you could switch to a higher class. And so I'm teaching these beginning kids, and there's this kid in my class who was, I don't know, 13, 14, and he was really technically proficient, like more so than me. Like, I couldn't teach this kid anything technique-wise. And I was like, and after the first class, I said, look, this is rock guitar 1. You probably want to move up to, you know, take one of the other guys' classes. And he said, no, it's okay. And I figured out later it's because there was 2 girls in my class.
Yeah.
And it was a small class. It was only 4 kids.
That kid probably went far.
I don't know. He was kind of shy. He reminded me of myself. So he probably actually...
But that brings up another just like stupid anecdote. You know, when you're making records, you know, Kayo Dot has made a lot of records now, and you know, all our records are different, and you notice, you know, when you go on tour and you have a very different sounding record. You remember this from back when you were playing with us, is that like certain records would have a different demographic that would show up at the show, and we'd actually have to produce different size shirts.
Yeah.
Depending on what record came out, like so, like you know, like the heavier, like nerdier records had to have, like, we had to produce more large shirts, like more extra large
Yeah.
shirts for like the big guys that would come to the show. And then like when the music kind of became like artier and like I don't even know like how to like describe it, but
I know what you mean.
But like when people started calling us like a hipster band, I guess, which we're not, you know, and like we're, like you can't be a hipster band if you're not popular, you know. But like then we noticed that like it was smaller, like skinnier guys, and we had to produce small shirts, you know, more often. And anyway, so related to that, we also noticed that like certain records will be like fewer girls or like more girls in the audiences, and, you know, and then just trying to think of like how you as like a proggy arty band that like has mostly a male audience, how that compares to other, you know, and no one listens to us, you know, and compare that to bands that actually do pretty well, people actually listen to them. Those bands, they have women in the audience, you know, usually like 50-50 or so, and it's interesting to note that it's like when you are in a band and you start noticing that your audience is expanding its demographic, you know, beyond just being like nerdy dudes. Let's say like women, you suddenly notice that there are women at your show, then you know that like your audience is growing, and that, you know, and that's actually going to like bode well for you, you know. But when you limit your audience to just the kind of like nerdy male like prog fan, then it's, you know, you're just going to be doing that forever if you don't figure out how to like reach more people, I guess.
The poet felt him a tree. He felt him a fern was shriven. He drew from pine his boat. Simple and imperfect, with evergreen dressing the fashioned boards from his longing, and sacrificed food and rest forever. Distasting this thing surrounding him, decay. The poet amidst the musical became the song, and what he had dreamt of being all alone.
All right, on to serious matters.
Okay.
Speaking of instrumental performances and everything like that, I've been curious about this. What's the deal with that new bass that you had made for you?
Oh, man, this guy emailed me. His name's Mark Sorrentino. He emailed me. He's a fan, but now that I've got to know him, I think of him as like much more than a fan. And he emailed me and he said, hey, I'm a luthier and I'd like to make you a bass. And I was like, okay, he actually didn't know Secret Chiefs music at all. He just came as a Kayo Dot Model of the Well fan. With Secret Chiefs, when I go on tour with them, I used to have to bring two basses. I used to have to bring like a regular one and one with a different intonation system. And anyway, I was like, man, it'd be great if I just had one bass. So I didn't have to bring two. And so I said, okay, let's make a 5-string and let's put the quarter tone frets on, so I can just use one bass. And then he also, like, it was his idea to have there be there's two different outputs on the bass, so I can go to 2 amps simultaneously with, like, each output is routed to, like, a different pickup. So you can go, like, you can do a one output and, like, have a mix of the pickups, or you can do 2 different outputs and have the pickups split to different amps. And actually, I play with 2 amps all the time. I don't know if he knew that. I think he just wanted to kind of have that circuitry. And then I asked him to do the quarter tone thing, and I think to him, he since he wasn't familiar with Secret Chiefs, I don't think he really knew why I wanted that, but anyway, he did it anyway, and yeah, so that's what it is. It's a bass that has quarter tone frets, and it has 2 outputs, and yeah, and it's all handmade. And he even like made the pickups like by hand.
Oh,
yeah, it's incredible. He actually, you know, when he sent it to me, the pickups weren't potted, you know, and so there was a lot of feedback, and the reason he didn't pot them is because vintage basses don't have potted pickups.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he really realized how loud we play, so it was just impossible to turn up loud without getting feedback. So he taught me how to pot the pickups, and I took the pickups out and I tried to pot them myself, which means basically you dip them in a wax bath, and I totally broke them. So then I had to send them back, and you had to remake them. Yeah, like I don't know if you ever like took a pickup out, but it's like wound with like a lot of very fine wire. You know, it's just like I took them out and the wire went everywhere, and I broke them. And it was yeah. Anyway, so like now that I've met him a few times, I've gotten to know him. He's actually like a really amazing craftsman. Like not only is he a luthier, he's like making handmade shoes now, and yeah, I mean he's really like a deep guy. It's cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, when you talked about the pickups, it reminded me of the first time I tried to rewire a pickup myself, and I ended up shocking myself pretty badly because I didn't do the ground wire properly or whatever. So I was like, oh, let's see if these works. Ow. Okay, let's try this. Ow.
Yeah, I'm really bad at soldering.
Yeah, me too.
I'm really bad at it.
Yeah, I'm bad at everything. I can play guitar. That's about it. Yeah. Well, yeah, because I was curious about it because I never asked you about it, and so now with Secret Chiefs, so I didn't realize you were using like the quarter tone stuff. I mean, I assumed there's something. I thought you were just kind of like manually doing that on the regular bass, but
no. Yeah, it's fretted that way.
Cool.
Yeah. And I guess it's worth noting that, like, you know, why not have a fretless bass? Because it sounds different.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. Fretless bass versus a fretted bass just has like this kind of like you know, it's more like glissy and rubbery, and that's just not the sound that Trey wanted for his music. Yeah, so it's still like with the frets, it sounds more like a rock bass, you know, but then you get those pitches anyway.
Well, that leads me to another question. So how exactly did you get involved with Secret Chiefs 3?
You know, in 2009, we were opening for them on that tour, and I guess they needed a bass player for that tour, and so they asked me to play. Just since we were going to be on the tour anyway, we being Kayo Dot, you know, and I don't know why Kayo Dot got picked to be part of that tour, but I think like the bass. I think the reason why they thought of me as a bass player, like a possible option for that, was I think that Randall Dunn had recommended me, I think, because, you know, I had done Blue Lamancy with Randall like recently before that. And, you know, on Blue Lamancy I played like almost everything. You know, Randall, I think, knew I was a bass player at that point because like there's some tricky bass parts on that record. So then I think, you know, and Randall's worked with Secret Chiefs a lot, and he's been friends with Trey for a while. So I think he was like, oh, you know, Toby could probably do this. I think that's how it happened. Okay. Yeah. And then I was just going to be a sub for a while, but then Shazad, the guy that they normally have, he's just like got too busy. I don't think he likes going on tour, on long tours. Okay. You know, usually when Shazad goes and does stuff now, he'll go out for just like a day or two at a time, and he does like a lot of jazz gigs and stuff, but I don't think that he's into like doing a 3-month 2-month rock tour, you know. But I like that stuff, so yeah, so they kept me.
And how was it for you learning the Secret Chiefs parts ahead of time? I mean, especially with the stuff with the quarter tonal stuff, I mean, did you find it hard? Did you find it
well, you know, I think I could get it mostly down by ear, and then I, you know, before that very first tour, I met with Trey ahead of time, and we spent a day just refining the details. But yeah, you know, like there are certain idiosyncrasies about Secret Chiefs bass parts that I think took me a while to really internalize, I guess. Mm-hmm. yeah, it's like any composer has their own idiosyncrasies. Trey's just happen to be ideas of rhythm that you probably never thought of before. Like a lot of the, like when I teach Kayo Dot members like guitar parts, it like Ron's biggest complaint usually is just like, why is that being fretted that way? That's insane.
That was my complaint too.
Yeah. But with Trey, it's just like, you have to reconceptualize rhythm.
You have to. So.
Yeah.
Well, this is another thing to point out, and I noticed this. I think it took me a while to notice it, but I figured it out eventually. Was that, I mean, you say you do things functionally as an instrumentalist, but
I did.
Well, no, I know, but I'm talking about the period where you're talking about. I'm talking about like the early years.
Yeah.
But I still think, like, I found that your approach to guitar, I found to be very interesting and kind of inspiring to me. Like, it may have been functional at the time, but the way you approached, chords, the way you approached finger picking, things like that. I thought it was, at first I was like, God, why is he fucking doing this? but I came to realize, it's like anything. If you're used to doing something a certain way, you immediately, when something different comes your way, you're like, oh, what the fuck? But in the last few years or whatever, I've come to realize that, okay, yeah, that did have a big effect on me in terms of how I approach certain things in my own music, because I'm like, oh, this reminds me of this one thing you did in that one song or something like that. So, I mean,
yeah.
So,
well, that goes back to what we were talking about before. Where it's like when you learn somebody else's parts,
yeah,
you stretch your vocabulary, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I think I also learned. You were pretty much responsible for me getting into alternate tunings all the time.
Oh yeah, I love alternate tunings.
Because I was in like 5 different tunings for a gig for Malden and Kayo Dot.
Yeah, that's dumb, by the way.
Why is that dumb?
Because you have to tune between every song, and it's just like, it makes for not a good show,
Well, you have to bring multiple guitars.
Well, yeah, but like 5 guitars, I mean, yeah, if you had a guitar tech, it's cool. What I like to do these days is I like to write an entire album around a tuning now, so that we can go play a bunch of songs from an album and like not have to retune. It's much smarter than having every single song be different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something that we were like really not good at, like in our early days, was like length of time between songs. But then once we started doing like kind of like loops and improvisations, it became kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, I never minded it, even during the first Kayo Dot tours that we did. I never really felt like it took me that long between songs.
Maybe it didn't take you that long, but I mean there were 9 people, that had to all retune, right? So.
Okay, so I got the gold star. I was the awesome member of the group. Well, I mean, we learned that more, like the loops between songs. I think, like, do you think you picked that up kind of when we were touring with Cerberus Shoal and how they like purposely had like?
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Because they had such an amazing flow. We were like, we need that. Mm-hmm. That flow. Yeah. That
still stands out. I think that was probably my favorite tour of what we did.
Yeah, that band was awesome.
I'm trying to get them on, but
oh yeah.
Well, I'm trying to get Colleen and Caleb at least on it.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could talk about that thing you asked me about the other day.
Okay.
Which I have it in a text message. I could read it, but why don't you start?
Yeah. It starts off. It's a normal concern I have. And the concern that I'm putting all this effort into doing music, or doing my music the way I want to do it, obviously, and then having this realization that you spend this money, you're making these albums of the music you want to make, and then thinking, and it may not be true, but thinking that like people just really don't care, and if people don't care, then why do you do it? Not that you shouldn't continue. Not that I would stop doing music. want to make that clear, but more like what do I expect to get out of it if why make CDs and albums if no one's going to buy them or no one's going to care about them when I could just do it for myself and just please myself, I think, and give up trying to build momentum for a musical project. And it was something, I think at the time I emailed that to you, I was just having a really hard time of it. Having one of those moments where I just was feeling like, it's like, you pimp your music out and you don't want to be a whore about it and just like post every day, buy my shit. But then like realizing that like, well, nobody's really buying your shit. So do you listen to the market, so to speak, and say like, well, there's not really a desire for the kind of music I'm making, and therefore should I offer it to them, or should I just go off into do it but not put it out there, I guess.
Yeah. So man, there are so many things that I have to say about this particular thing. One is I think about you a lot, your situation, that basically like you quit being in Kayo Dot, you pursued Ballasset, except your model of living is that you have a job that like pays you at like a decent wage. You have a house, you have a wife, you have all this like stuff, you have like this normal like kind of existence, and you're free to basically make music as you please. You have like a little home studio, you know what I mean? Like whenever you can, you go to a professional studio, you know what I mean? Like and you pay for it out of the pocket, out of the money that you earn at your job, you have a car, you know what I mean? Like you have all this stuff that's like that like normal like middle class people have, that is actually very enviable, and I have none of that stuff. And I basically like, I pursue music as we both pursue music as a passion, but I also pursue music as a career path. And so things like sales and things like that are actually like impact me like very, very directly, and they don't actually like impact you directly, you know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah.
So I often think about how like, I love that like my music resonates with people like on a personal and artistic level. That's really amazing. Like whenever I get an email or something somebody says to me, your music means so much, thank you very much for what you're doing, that means so much to me. Like I really, really appreciate that. But a lot of the time I think about, man, if I didn't have to share my music with anyone, if I didn't have to like get it out there in order to get some return on it, then would I bother sharing it? I often think that what I would probably do is I would probably set up a website archive, and I'd probably just be like, here's all the music for free, just take it if you want it, and if you discover it, if you come to this website and discover it, fine, great, take it, but I don't have to bother like promoting it or anything like that, and it just exists for people to take because I'm independently wealthy or whatever, and I don't need the return. You know what I mean? And that would be like really, really awesome. And so a lot of time, like I think about your situation, I'm like, man, maybe that would be better, to just be able to just make music and just put it out there and not really worry about whether it like affects your income and your career and that kind of thing. Let me see, where was I going with that? Anyway, yeah. So like a lot of the time, I think that might be better. And I think that your situation might be better than my situation. So anyway, someone in your situation, it's like when you are saying when you're putting your music out there, but you don't really actually need people to like buy the music, you know what I mean? Then it's like then the question you have to ask is like, why do you care if people actually get the music? Is it because you're longing for some kind of like way to resonate with people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think you're right on the money there. I think here's the thing. I mean, I'm not egotistical to the point where I believe that the music I make is the best music ever. Let's get that right out of the way. I don't have any kind of thing about that. I think it's that I would like, because, all right, let me back up. Even when we were doing the Modeling of the Well stuff, okay, so as you remember, we were always getting really good reviews. We were getting really cool emails, joke replies or not joke replies, but in all seriousness, though, we were getting really cool emails from people saying, like, your music is really good, and it's still, to this day, I know you hate getting asked as much as I do, hey, when are you going to make an album that sounds like Maudlin again? You know what I mean? So it's like, but it's not because we don't like that people ask the question, it's just that, that was like one phase of our life, a long time ago, that we've, moved on in various different ways. But, well, we can go back to that in a minute. But the point being, we weren't making any money off Maudlin, because as good as the reviews we were getting, as good as getting a full color article in Metal Maniacs, which to me was a huge deal.
Yeah.
At that time. Did we have an increase in sales? No, there was no. We didn't see a cent. And then it goes to show you that when we split off and did Kayo Dot, that like the albums went unreleased for like a long time until it was sort of financially feasible for the record labels to put them out again.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, it's not about money. It's not about. You're right. My situation can be enviable in the sense that I don't need music to pay my bills. I would like it to. My goal with music financially, in my position, would be to have it be self-sustaining.
Okay, so hang on. You're kind of bringing up one of the other things that I wanted to mention. Mm-hmm. Is that okay? It's like consider like your position and like the way that you need like music as a passion versus music as like a kind of like business / like kind of like market present. I feel that like if you want to like pursue the music as a business thing and as like a market presence and actually like make money off it and actually have people listen to it, then you have to really like go at it real hard. You can't just like sort of like do it kind of shallow. You can't just be like, oh well, I have a Bandcamp page, so why aren't people listening? Like, you know what I mean? You have to have like the full like triumvirate assault of touring, promotion, and distribution.
Right.
You need to have all of those things working together, and you have to work really hard to get them to work together. And it's like if you're only doing it like a little bit, only kind of half-assed, then you might as well not do it at all. So then you have to just ask yourself, it's like, what do I want to get out of this? And like you said, if you want it to be self-sustaining, like if you just want to like be able to just make music and have it pay for itself, you have to invest more in it. That's all. And back to what you're saying about people emailing us with Maudlin and maybe why aren't people emailing you about Baliset? I don't know, but like the reason is because Maudlin had a guy doing PR for us. And really, it's like the only reason anybody cares about any band, and the only reason people know about bands is because somebody lets them know about it. You have to like all the bands that are popular now that have like good reviews and Pitchfork and everything like that. That's all just like publicity that's paid for, and that they like all those bands and those labels have someone working like pretty much full time to make sure that like the public out there knows who these bands are. So you can't just sit there and just be like, and feel sorry for yourself and be like, why don't people know about my music if you're not participating in that game? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And like maybe you don't want to participate in that game, and that's fine. But if you decide to not participate in that game, then don't expect there to be the same type of result that the bands who do participate in that game receive.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess, yeah, it's kind of this thing where, and I know it's silly because I know, and I admit that it's silly because it's something silly, but that But it's just, it's that kind of yearning for some sort of validation that what I'm doing is good.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it has nothing to do with the music.
Yeah.
I know that you're thinking that. I know when you asked me about this the other day, you were like, "Does that mean that the music's not good?" Because you said, "Man, I feel like my music is good."
I do.
And you're like, "Why doesn't anyone else feel like my music is good?" And I have to say, man, it's not about the music. It's just about the visibility of it. That's all. As far as I know, the only way that you're getting your message out is via Facebook and maybe the Ultimate Metal board. And what else? If you're not.
I did.
Perpetual motion board,
No, I not really perpetual motion anymore. No. With the first Ballad album, I sent out about 50 or so. I sent out 350 promotional copies because I sent out 50 of my own to different magazines and zines and internet presences and then we did an indie radio campaign where we sent out a bunch of Boston bands got together and sent out our records all together, and so it only cost us like $100 each, and we sent out to specifically marketed towards. I shouldn't say specifically marketed, but just blanketing college radio markets. Like here's a metal band, here's a indie rock band, and here's a pop band from Boston, so they could fit in on your shows. So take a listen. So, I felt like with the first album, I put a lot of money and I put a lot of effort into getting the word out there, and I didn't really get much of a return.
Yeah.
I got a few reviews, some good, some favorable, some bad, whatever.
Yeah. Well, like I said a minute ago, it's like if you're gonna go that way, you have to not do it half-assed. So, for example, the thing you just mentioned is you said, "Oh yeah, we sent CDs to radio stations." But the bands that have the PR guy is calling the radio station a couple weeks later and being like, "Hey, just wanted to make sure you got my CD and will you please play it?" And if all you did was just mail it and then never call him back, then that could be considered just kind of half-assed approach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why bands and labels spend so much money on these PR people, is because basically the amount of attention that it takes to actually get results is almost like a full-time job. And that someone like in your position who has a day job, comes home at night, does music, you don't have any time to devote to PR.
Right. You don't.
Yeah, it's just unrealistic for you. Yeah.
It isn't realistic because, I work 40 hours a week, sometimes more, not to mention 2 hours worth of commuting every day. And
Yeah, I
have other stuff going on in my life. I can't just focus on I can't just come home from work, get on my computer, and just be emailing for.
Yeah. And this in a way will sound dark, but it's just the way it is. It's if you have the money, then I think the best way to kind of get the results that you want to see is just hire a publicist for your album. You should probably expect to spend something like $3,000 to $4,000 before you actually get any real results.
Yeah.
That's another thing about PR is that if you're just spending this is what Hydra Head did with Kayo Dot. They would spend $500 on PR, and then nothing would happen. And it was man, you should have just spent zero, because $500 isn't enough to actually do anything. You need to basically be able to pay somebody enough so that they can devote a lot of time and energy to it. So I think the rule that I've heard from a lot of people in the industry, in the kind of indie, the scene that I'm in, is expect $3,000 or $4,000 to be the amount that is going to get you the result that you want. And if you can afford that, then that's what you should do.
Yeah,
because that's what but that's what all the other bands do.
Yeah. So basically, if you want to get the same results as other bands, you have to do the same.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I mentioned to you in the when you asked me about this the other day, I was like, man, it's really just a system, and all you have to do is you just have to follow the template, and if you follow the template, then it actually will probably work. And because it really has nothing to do with art at all. Nothing to do with nothing to do with music, nothing to do with any of that shit. It just has to do with the business points, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. It's super dark. It sucks. It's so stupid. But
well, it brings up an interesting an interesting thing.
Yeah, the interesting thing.
The interesting thing is, well, no, but you put out Hubardo yourself, though, correct?
Yeah.
So what did you guys end up doing any kind of promotion, publicity for that, or was that more just?
Yeah, well, I think Kayo Dot we have a fan base of like a few hundred people that will buy everything we put out. And I think that that was one of the ideas about like maybe what's the new model of music gonna be, of music sales gonna be in this kind of like milieu of everybody downloading everything for free. Basically, like I think a lot of people thought that like, well, if you have like a product that's a small print run, and you have like your small fan base, and your small fan base buys it for like a premium, I guess, and everyone else downloads it, at least like you've made enough money off that project to make that project worthwhile, I guess. Anyhow, so with Hubardo, it was like, yeah, we have a few hundred people that'll buy everything we do, which might just be 500 people, but we're like, I have a mailing list of like like a few thousand people, so you just sent it out. We're just like, okay, we're only going to do 500 of these, and there's not going to be any CD, and it was easy to sell out of 500 copies, just because it's not that many of them.
Right, and I think what to take out of that is also, that's not just a band just coming out and being like, oh, we're going to do 500 copies. You're also basing that small audience of 500 on the fact that you had 10 years of grinding away, doing touring.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I think there's a difference there. It's like, if I go out and say, do the same thing, I wouldn't have the response because I don't, necessarily have that much of a built-in audience yet, because
right.
It's just, because you're talking about by that point you've built up some momentum for your band because you're always putting out records and always like that's one thing I admire, is that you still push forward no matter what, like even if, like you said, like if the promotion is not bringing really huge returns, you're still putting it out there because you still believe in what you're doing.
And like I think anybody that's followed my career path knows that I've tried like lots of different approaches, and I have to say that like doing the self-release thing like Hubardo is not something I would want to do again. Doing a crowdfunding thing, like we did like Tartalam 2, and I like Ichnumonity, like this classical thing I did via Kickstarter. I wouldn't do that again. All of them, like even Hubardo, like kind of lost money because it's like just the expenses end up being a lot higher than you think they're going to be. Even if you calculate everything and you're like really, really meticulous about it, it still ends up being more than you think. Yeah, and so it's not really like the best model. I think like the model that I prefer is a supportive label.
I think most people are coming around to that. I think
it's like delegating responsibilities. Doing a self-release and like vinyl production, everything. In doing all the music, we do all the artwork. I mean, it's just like it's too much work. All the mail order, you know what I mean? It's too much work for just like one or like 2 or 3 people to do. It's you have to be able to like delegate these like specialties to people who are delegate the kind of like business stuff to a label who's good at that thing,
right?
So that the artist can focus on the music.
And what I'm noticing too is that I don't think, and correct me if you know anything, but I don't know if I've known anybody who has a fucking clue what we're supposed to do as independent musicians in terms, meaning like something that, like you said, there is a template maybe in terms of promotion, but like everybody's trying, it seems to me that there's always somebody trying some new way of drawing attention to their band or drawing attention to their release, and maybe that'll work for them. And then other bands try to copy that, and then it doesn't work out, and then we're back to the drawing board. Like, there's no, we're still in this kind of mutating phase where switching over to whatever the new music model is for the business, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's really sad because it's actually been like 15 years now, and how come we haven't figured something out yet? It really sucks.
Well, I mean, there's good bits of everything. I mean, if you think about it, like, it would be awesome if you had a Spotify-esque service which does what Spotify does and but actually pays you really well, because the idea of being paid per play as opposed to being paid, like if you like I spend $10 buying a CD from you, and if it's a CD I really love, how many times over the course of the next 10 years am I going to play that CD? A bunch. Mm-hmm. And so if you put a fair wage to how much one of those plays is worth, and this is why Spotify's kind of a funky subject, but if you put a fair wage over what one play of one song on that album is worth, and you tally that up over 10 years, it would probably be worth more to you than getting the $10 up front.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Spotify's not at that point yet, So it seems to me like that's the one thing I like about it, is that I like the idea of being paid per play as opposed to I guess. I mean, it seems like it should work, but it's still not really where it needs to be.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this is a rabbit hole, man. Like this.
Yeah, well, I want to go down it.
Yeah, there's a good question, like, why isn't there that model yet? I really don't know. I mean, the guy, the CEO of Spotify is like exorbitantly rich, right? So he's obviously like taking way more than he needs to.
Yeah.
But then there are other models, like let's say like there's a model, like let's say like Facebook. Facebook apparently isn't really making any money, right? So, but everybody uses it. You know what I mean? So I mean I don't think that I could really like talk about this stuff like on an expert level, because I don't think I really know all the details, but about everybody's business model. But yeah, I guess like the point is, yeah, there should be something like a music library out there like Spotify that pays musicians fairly. But yeah, why doesn't that exist already? I don't know. Yeah, you could create it, I guess.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, but then you have to dedicate basically your life to that.
Yeah. No, I know. There's no easy answer. And a lot of us aren't expertly trained in business enough to know the inner workings of these kinds of things.
Yeah, and every company's got like something a little bit different going on.
Yeah.
So unless you know exactly about that one company, then you can't really generalize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the creative stuff, because get out of that rabbit hole.
Yeah. That's really like. I feel like that gets probably not that interesting to like non-musicians anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of shit. Yeah.
But let's talk about Coffins On Io a little bit.
Okay.
If you want to.
Sure.
Because it's the new record.
Yeah.
And you were thinking about I remember you mentioning to me that you thought you might actually put it under a different band name because it sounded so different to you at first from like normal Kayo Dot stuff.
Yeah. Like really what happened with that album is that like Hubardo came out in like between September and November 2013. The digital came out in September, the vinyl came out in November. And then by the end of January, I had a handful of new songs. And really they were songs that like weren't I would say like they weren't really like compositionally deep, you know what I mean? They were just like riffs, like verse chorus verse sections. So anyway, we were in rehearsal and like we didn't have a show coming up, and I was like, hey, do you guys want to just play this stuff? I just want to see what it sounds like. Let's see what we can do with it. And we played it, and it was pretty cool. And I was like, and then we all kind of like collectively decided, we were like, yeah, let's record this, And we don't necessarily have to do anything with it, is what we said. We can just record it and just see what we have. And so then we did that. And then around the same time, I got a bunch of like synths at home, and like I got Logic, and I wanted to play around with production and that kind of thing. So I was working on these tracks, like I was composing them vertically as opposed to linearly. I would, you know what I mean? Like I was working on like kind of like towers of production I just like adding layers and like interlocking sort of synths and things like that. And that was like something that I thought was really fun. But linearly speaking, the song structure was still like pretty much like A B whatever. Like it wasn't really like through composed music. It was definitely more like rock music. Then we had these songs anyway, and then and then the band was like, man, what should we do with these? And one idea was like, oh, let's release them as singles, like one every month, or something like that. Just like build some hype, I guess. Another idea was like, oh, let's just like release them under a different band name. And the reasoning for that was because, when I was trying to do press for Hubardo on my own, we didn't have a PR agency or anything like that. We couldn't afford it. And I noticed, like, trying to do press for Hubardo, I couldn't get any press for that. Like, the only thing we got really was the NPR, which is amazing that we got that. And Cult Nation helped us out a lot because the guy that writes for Cult Nation has been a fan of ours for a long time. But other than that, man, we really couldn't get any like good big press. No Pitchfork, nothing like that, like nothing. And really, like, I was like, man, I wonder if one of the reasons why we can't get any press is because we don't have a PR agent that we're hiring, because that's it's like a little bit of a payola system, a little bit, yeah. Or B, maybe we're just like too old for like people to think that we're relevant. Because like the thing about like blog press is that it's all about just like what's fresh, and a band that's like 10, 11 years old is not fresh. And I was like, man, I wonder if it's just like people read my subject lines like Kayo Dot record and like they just don't even open it or care or listen. I don't know. I think a lot of the time with Kayo Dot too, people have a preconception of what they think we sound like, and they're always wrong, because Kayo Dot always sounds different. I remember I met this guy. There's this band called Gone. It's spelled GA''AN from Chicago. They're prog. Like I really like them. And Vora did a show with Gone, and then the keyboard or the bass player or whatever from Gone said to me after the show, he's like, it's really cool to hear a goth band, Vora, that's sophisticated. And I was like, oh, if you like sophisticated goth stuff, you might like my other band. It's called Kayo Dot. And he was like, oh, I've heard of Kayo Dot. I thought that was a avant-garde grind band. And I was like, Jesus Christ, man, like that's nothing like it's like, why would this guy think that? Like, what's he hearing? How has Kayo Dot been showing up on his radar that's what he thinks? And it just made me think about that kind of thing. Like people have these like preconceived notions of what Kayo Dot is, and they never heard it before. And it's just because of like the associations that Kayo Dot had, stuff like Hydra Head or whatever, John Zorn, any of that stuff. So anyway, so I was like, man, if we just like change the band name, and not change the band name, but if we just like call these recordings something different, and I send it to press, I wonder if we'll get some press. I wonder if it's really just because of the band name, because people like have this idea of what Kayo Dot is. And we're thinking about trying that. We're like, well, okay, if we can't get label support and we end up self-releasing this, then let's do that. But then the Flenser wanted to put it out, and we're like, oh, okay, I guess we're gonna do a real record now. and then we had the opportunity to actually add a couple songs, because we wanted to make it a full length. It was no longer a handful of singles, So we wrote a couple other songs, and it became a full length, I guess. And that's how that album came about. Yeah, but yeah, it's really different. You've heard it,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well, yeah, I really love Coffins on Io. I mean, I told you that already. I really love it.
Yeah, you did tell me.
And this is the compliment.
I'm glad you like it. Thanks, man.
But I don't know. I mean, I like that it was like I said, it's, I don't know. I liked the different approach to it. I mean, I liked Hubardo, I liked Coyote, I liked everything you've done. And I know I'm skipping over a bunch of stuff, but the point is, like, I've loved the way where you've gone as Kayo Dot. I've loved the progression of the band. I like the different influences that you bring in, the different kind of vibe you bring to each record. I think that's admirable. You're not kind of like the because you remember growing up and thinking, how you had the band that you loved, and then there's that one album they did which like polarizes everybody.
Yeah, it's always my favorite one.
It is.
Yeah.
You know, and
yeah, that My Dying Bride 34.7.
yeah, that's what I was gonna bring
I
up.
love that album. Or like that Yes album where like the singer from the Buggles is on. You know that one?
Yeah, Drama.
Yeah, man.
I still haven't really listened to Drama yet, which I know Keith will beat me for, but I know how much he loves that one.
Yeah, man. Like it's always like those one like weird adventurous albums are always like the cool ones.
Yeah, and no one ever. Yeah.
And you might not realize it at the time, but then later you're like, yeah, actually that one was refreshing.
Yeah, totally. Well, what I mean is that it almost feels like that with Coffins on Io. That it's like it seems so radically. I felt like even though there's different things you were exploring in each album, this one definitely feels very different from the others. I
think like a lot of Kayo Dot fans are not gonna dig it, but I think like from a musician's point of view, one of the things that keeps me interested in like continuing to make music is being like, oh, I wonder what happens if I play with this idea. I wonder what happens if I play with this different idea, and trying different ideas just to see, because it's exciting, and I can't imagine that music would be exciting for somebody that never tries new ideas. That I would get bored so quickly. I would probably want to stop playing music. I would go do something else in my life. But fortunately, with music, there's so many different things that you can try. That's just what I guess that's my style. I just like trying new approaches. And like I said earlier, like the Coffins on Io thing is from a musician point of view. It's really it's twofold, I guess. One is the vertical composition thing that I was talking about. I really wanted to kind of like be a producer, you know what I mean? I wanted to produce it like pop style. Usually when you do a record in a studio, your time and budget is limited, so the way Kayo Dot's been doing it in the past few years is that we go record stuff live, and we have a little bit of time to do a little bit of overdubs, but it's mostly like a live product, So Hubardo, for example, is like not a very produced album. It's mostly just like the songs like as we play them with like a few overdubs, but like not that much, you know what I mean? Because you just can't afford to do like cool like tricky production stuff, right. Details and things like that. But with Coffins on Io, we did most of it. We did the basics in a professional studio, and then I did all the kind of like synth stuff at home and vocals at home and stuff. So I actually had the liberty to treat it like, to really think of it as like a production, like a record, more than like a live document. That's really like the first time. Well, I mean, I actually did that with Stained Glass. Other than Choirs of the Eye, Stained Glass, this is really like the only record that I've done, like other than those two, that really like I approach from like a producer perspective, and that's actually like a really like totally different and interesting way of composing, I think. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like
no, exactly.
Yeah. So I really wanted to just explore that this time, and I think that when you have, this is something I learned from Secret Chief's music too, is that when you have simple ideas and like a song consists of like just a few ideas, concise ideas, then you have a lot more liberty to kind of like explore the production end and have it still make sense and not have it sound like a lot of like random things going on, because it's actually like the consistent like repetitive content of the music is what's tying everything together, and then the production can kind of like go all over the place, but the kind of like riffs and stuff are still like consistent. They're tying everything together. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with this record, I guess. Yeah, and so I said it was twofold, and then the other fold of that is that I've been thinking a lot lately about ideas that resonate with people, trying to compose music that reaches people, that communicates well, and I think that like a flaw of a lot of music that's made by younger people, immature music, and like especially like proggy fans, you tend to kind of make music only for yourself, and you forget that like your audience is bigger than just like that niche. I think that like a lot of time when you're like focused on a scene, you're like, well, this is my niche, they're gonna like this kind of thing, this is who I'm speaking to, but you forget that the world is actually giant, and that you could actually potentially speak to a lot more people. You know what I mean? So I've been just thinking about that idea, and thinking about like how do you put smart ideas into music that's actually like more immediate. So I'm interested in that kind of immediacy, but I still want it to be smart and sophisticated, I guess.
Yeah, well, that reminds me of when I read an interview with Bruce Dickinson about the Chemical Wedding, because someone said, well, you did think these really dense lyrics about very different things you're interested in, magic and things like that or whatever. And he said his thing was, well, I wanted to make an album, again, like you said, he's like, I wanted to make an album that grabs you, and if that's all that happens, if it just grabs you and you're like, this is really cool, fine, but if you want to dig deeper, there's something there for you to dig into. So it's not just, I'm going to put this out there, it's going to make you feel a certain way temporarily, and then it's going to go away, and that's it. Yeah. It's like, but if you really want to, you can dig deeper into that. And
yeah. And
so, granted, you guys are much different than Bruce Dickinson, but
I'm on that page now. Yeah. I think, yeah. It's interesting. Also, I think a lot of the time, I think you and I probably both thought this when we were younger. You probably less than me. I think I was probably more snobby than you. As a young musician, fan of proggy, like smart, sophisticated stuff, I think that you tend to have a judgment about like pop music.
Yes.
That you're like, pop music's stupid. You're like, it's so easy. Taryn was like would totally like probably still be on that page. He'd probably be like, yeah, because we've had many discussions about this. It's like, fuck pop. I could write a pop song in like 5 minutes. I mean, that's true. Like 2 minutes, you probably could. But like, what makes a pop song magical? What makes a pop song a great pop song? There's like a really big difference between a pop song that's like a shitty pop song that, yes, it immediately grabs people. And like, and it's like a product, like this Rihanna shit, or a pop song that's like a great pop song, like some Michael Jackson shit. You know what I mean? And there's a really big difference. But what is it? It's not necessarily technical, and that's actually,
I think about this a lot.
Yeah, that's actually like very interesting to me. That there's not like these objective technical things, because it's like the chord progressions are kind of the same, and the melody, like it's not that. It's just like, what is it? Anyway, I'm interested in kind of exploring that. I think the idea that like it's easy to write great pop music is like an incorrect assumption by like young prog fans.
Yes.
It's easy to write a shitty pop song, but to write a great pop song is not fucking easy. I think. Yeah, I think it takes as much work as writing a great art rock song.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it is. I don't know how to explain it, and I think I've maybe talked to you about this before. But one of the things I've done the last few years is I've really gotten more into listening to, learning songs. Something I never really did for a long time. I never really bothered to learn other people's music. Now I do. I don't play it out, but I just learn it because I'm curious about what they're doing, and especially listening to, like David Bowie. Just for an example, listening and learning some of his songs. Some of them have like really kind of intricate chord changes, some don't. And there are other bands I'll listen to where like, yeah, I'll learn to play this song. For instance, "Wicked Game" by Chris Isaak, 3 chords. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's just 3 chords in that entire song. But yet, to me, it's one of the best pop songs.
Yeah, it's a great song.
It's a great song. And so, and when you read about the technical aspect of it, I mean, it's not like it was a product of really amazing musicianship either, because, I mean, not that the musicians weren't good, but, when you read about it, the bass and the drums on that song were just cut together. It wasn't like a live in studio kind of thing. It was just, they just kind of created this bass and drums, like by cutting tape together, kind of like almost like what you would do in Pro Tools now. Mm-hmm. And then they just had the simple guitar chords, and then it's just great vocal, cool lyrics, good melody, good vocal performance. And so, like, it's just there's this magical unknown factor to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't explain it. Like, I can't explain why that's good and why X, Y, and Z band's song is shit.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing, and I think that's why you and I, maybe we disagreed on music a lot when we were younger, but I feel like we are into the same things as evidenced by the fact that you played Ultravox. You sang an Ultravox song at karaoke, and I really like that a lot. 'Cause I love that band.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think we're kind of into that same kind of thing. Because I would love that. I would love to learn how to write a good pop song.
Yeah.
Because I think that's something. Equally as good as, like, say, writing some compositionally innovative masterpiece or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, I guess, like, that possibly makes a good pop song is that, like, the writing has to come from a place of actually living life.
Yes.
Like, if you try to write about ideas that are they're reaching to resonate with people, but your own life has been just this kind of like nothing's happening, sort of insular, just kind of myopic way of existing. Let's say, like, in a Prague scene.
Yeah.
Then, like, who are you gonna resonate with? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there has to be some, like, realness to it.
Yeah, there has to be something real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Maybe we better wrap it up.
Yeah, as I was about to say.
Yeah.
This has been good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.